Fabulous, thank you. Everyone, I'm pretty sure everyone's got all of the information that they need from me now, so I'm just going to hand straight over to Tara and you can get going. Have a great one, guys.
First, non-unmute, but yeah, thanks very much, Erica. That's great. Hi, everybody. So as Erica said, I'm Tara. I work part at the RFC as an engagement officer, but I also work as a photographer. I've worked as a teacher. I've worked as a technician. So, you know, this whole workshop is really about getting the most out of the creative sector, because I found by piecing everything together, working on lots of different things, I've managed to carve a career. But sometimes I have more work and sometimes I don't have so much work. But I feel by being able to have a finger in a lot of pies, if that's the right word, it's sort of helped me keep stable. So that's going to be the main focus of today. I'm kind of going to look at different job titles within the arts. So if you don't know what a producer is or what engagement is or development is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about those roles. If there's any other roles that you want to go over as well, we'll have time to do that too. I'm going to look at the kind of 3 major sources of income as well when you're working in the creative sector, and that's employment. So you're employed in a role, self-employment or freelancing, and then getting funding as well. I'm going to do a real micro introduction to Arts Council England's lottery grants as well. So I'm just going to show you where you can get the forms and some major pitfalls, and hopefully how to avoid them. So does that all sound good? Does that kind of sound like what you're here for? Lovely, that's great, I'm glad to hear it. Before we get started as well, I'd just like to say a couple of housekeeping rules. I'm sure you're all well versed in this as I am now, but mute on when you're not speaking. Just give me a wave either actually, or give me a wave with an icon or in the chat if you want to contribute anything. And other things as well. I understand that, for me, if I'm listening into these kind of things, sometimes I want to get up and get a drink. Absolutely fine. Don't need to let me know. Do your own thing and self-regulate. One last thing which I learned today. I was on a Zoom call earlier, and I don't know if this makes a difference to you instantly, but I heard that when you're sitting up really close to the camera, it kind of triggers our reptile brain, so our vagus nerve, and it can be a little bit, put you in more like fight or flight mode. So when you move back and give yourself a bit of space, it kind of helps you breathe a bit, and it gives a bit more, seems a little bit more friendly. I found that earlier today, and hopefully that's useful for you, but don't worry if you just, that's not what your environment's set up for, that's fine. If you can as well, I do like video on, but you don't have to. I'm going to do breakout rooms later on, so yeah, it will just be mindful of that. So it's quite nice to chat to someone if you can, but don't worry again if it's really not for you. Fab. All right then, so I'll kick off, guys. Let me just share something with you. Where have we got it? Why isn't that coming up on my share screen? I'll tell you what, everybody, rather than do that first as well, let me get to know you guys a little bit more and I'll figure out my screen sharing. So if we can just go around and I'll pass it on as well. So I'll say my name's Tara. I'm interested in photography, community engagement, and working on heritage as well. And I'm going to pass along to Kate, and Kate, if you can do the same and then pass it on to the person next to you, that would be great.
Okay, hi, I'm Kate. I'm also a photographer, and I'm also really interested in producing and kind of getting to know that role in particular, but also anything in the arts. I'm just seeing what's out there. But yeah, Ruth is next to me, so I'll pass on to Ruth.
Hi, I'm Ruth, and I've just graduated from the Uni of Birmingham, and I'm working towards being a director for film and theatre and an actor. And Hattie, you're next to me.
Hi, I'm Hattie. I'm interested in design for live performance and theatre, and anything making really in the arts. And Romy, you're next to me. Romy.
Hi, I'm Romy. I'm interested in theatre and movement, dance, physical theatre, and facilitation. Yeah. Louisa is sort of next to me.
Hi, I'm Louisa. I'm a visual artist, so that's mostly what I'm interested in. But lately, I've taken an interest in arts for mental well-being and arts in a therapeutic sense and how they can help people. Yeah. And next to me is Tara, but I think I'm gonna pass it on to Ruth.
I've already gone, so I'll pass it on to Grace Cooper.
Hiya, sorry, I was about to turn it on as well. So yeah, I'm Grace. What was it to tell what we're interested? Well, I'm in my 3rd year studying applied theatre, so I'm pretty much into everything theatre. I want to dip my finger into as many pies as I can. I love writing, you know, working with young people. At the moment we're doing our dissertation, and my sort of idea is working with like young women, sort of recreating some kind of like I don't know, like sisterhood among young women, you know, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Hattie. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. Hi.
I've been again. I think Joseph, have you been?
I have not been. Hello, I'm Joe. Joe or JJ or Joseph, I don't mind. I'm a writer first and foremost. I've been making films since my teenage years. Before that, I was in the theatre. I've very much bounced from place to place, but the one thing that's remained consistent is writing. And I'll pass it to Erica. I believe they haven't gone yet.
I'm on mute. I'll do my little introduction. Everyone else most knows me. So I'm Erica. I'm the director of Culture Central, and my I'm predominantly in kind of sector support or more kind of arts management, strategic kind of work. So I'm not an artist. I'm not at all creative in any way, shape, or form. But I believe very much in its power on all levels.
Who have we got left? Katie, have you gone?
I haven't gone. I'm sorry my camera's off. My internet is just so bad, it just buffers. I am interested in producing predominantly, and I want to produce emerging artists and help them out. That's the aim. So hopefully we'll get there. I will nominate Tia, if she's okay.
Hi, I'm just in the middle of bath time, but I am interested, her bath time, not mine. Interested in, visual arts mostly, and community arts, and similar to what the other lady said, arts and well-being mostly. Yeah, I'm not sure who else needs to go.
I think we've just got Caris left, is that right? Thanks, Tia.
Hi, I'm Caris. I'm in my final year at uni doing English Lit and Film Studies, and I don't really know what I want to do. I guess that's why I'm here, to try and figure it out.
Wow, totally valued, Caris. That's absolutely the point of coming along to something like this, so you can figure it out. Great. And then Kathleen, did you have your hand up as well? Have we got any trade from you?
Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi was a bit dodgy, so I might have cut off at one point. I'm interested in directing, performing, and stage management. So yeah, mainly drama. I'm a final year drama student.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. It sounds like we've got a real variety of different skills, lots of theatrical as well. I'm imagining the RSC sort of brought you along to this, so that would be great as well. If you want to stay in touch after this, please do. I'll speak to Erica a bit about sharing information, but hopefully we can stay in contact. That sounds good to me. Right, so I finally worked out how to share my screen, and I have got a presentation which I want to share with you. So if you guys just give me a nod to let me know that you can see that. Can everyone see? Fab. Okay, excellent. So as I mentioned, this is about kind of moving around, identifying your skill set, finding opportunities and balancing different forms of employment, because it can get quite tricky as well as we kind of branch out into different forms of employment, making sure that you have boundaries and that you value your time as well appropriately. And that's me. I think I've told you about this already, but I work as an engagement officer. I teach in colleges. I'm a freelance photographer and educator in museums. And I'm currently applying for some funding from Arts Council as well. So I'm really fresh. It's all fresh in my head, the process. So I'm glad I can share that with you. And I'm also applying for Heritage Lottery funding. So I'm not going to speak about that so much today, but if you are interested, give me a shout and I can tell you some more about it. Fab. So first things first, I'm going to tell you about some roles in the sector. So again, forgive me if you do know all this already, but I think it's helpful to kind of just recap. And then as you can see on this slide, I've got some spares as well. So if there's anything that you want to know a little bit more about, if there's a role that you've heard of and you're not quite sure what it is or what it would entail, do let me know, and if I can, I will answer. But again, bear in mind that obviously within the arts and creative areas, there's lots of different roles. But hopefully I feel like I've got a good enough sense of things to know the broad outline. So first off, I've got engagement here. Does anyone want to kind of chip in as well? When I say engagement, what does that mean for people?
Reaching out to audiences. Sorry. Yeah, so maybe reaching out to audiences, reaching out to different companies and all that kind of thing, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, and Kate, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was thinking like engaging like schools and audiences and things so similar, like, yeah.
Great, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah? Come back to you. Sorry, your name's not flashing up now, so but you pops your hand up again. Blonde hair and a fringe.
I was just, don't mind me, it was more of a high five for the same like thought, so, but it didn't quite go through, so yeah, the thought was there. Yeah.
Thank you, Grace. Your name's come up again now. Right, okay. So yeah, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. When people talk about engagement generally, it's talking about engaging people, and a lot of the time people who don't traditionally engage, lots of use of the word engage there, maybe overused. And so that's one part of my job, of my few jobs. And so what it looks like in practice as well, because I think that's really important. We can talk about what something means, but like, what does that job actually look like? So I spend a lot of my time thinking about who the Royal Shakespeare Company doesn't work with and why, and what are the barriers that get in the way of them working with us, okay? And like, some of those barriers can be really obvious, like there can be financial barriers. There can be other barriers as well, like a big one is people really not being fussed about Shakespeare, or feeling like it's not right for them, or a little bit too pretentious for them as well. Can anyone else think of any other barriers that might stop somebody from engaging with an arts organisation or a theatre company?
Age. I feel like theatre is quite a traditional thing, and people think that it's quite inaccessible because of the, I don't know, tradition.
Fab, thank you. Yeah, that's perfect. So it's like we are always looking to engage young people, so especially like find we work a lot with children and school age children, but then once you get sort of 16 to a bit older, it can be a bit trickier to engage that age range. So perfect. Somebody else had their hands up as well. Yep, lovely.
I don't know if you touched on it briefly, but sort of like education within like school. So I know like I was mainly into like Shakespeare because of my English teacher. I think it's always a sign of like how good your teacher was for if you like enjoyed Shakespeare. I don't know.
I think it's a really good point that it's about, and I always see this in my job role and teaching, and what I love about it is it's kind of giving somebody the keys to access it. So it's like, you know, I imagine like all this information, all these nuggets, or the things that I like about costume or theatre or heritage, and part of my job is giving somebody the keys to unlock that information. So it's kind of like we give them a bit of context. You know, context is a great key in that respect. So if I tell somebody about what was going on at a certain time or what wasn't happening, you know, what wouldn't be on somebody's cultural radar during that time, I think it gives them a new appreciation. It kind of helps them put on those glasses or gives them those keys. I love an analogy as well, you'll say, to kind of get that information out. Absolutely. Somebody had their hands on down here, somebody with the white earphones. Sorry, the names keep stop. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, one of the reasons could also be the geographical location, because theatre involves people moving to certain locations, and if you live far away or you just don't have the transportation access, you just can't go to those locations and see the art, you know, the theatre. So yeah, so transportation and location, it's a big deal.
Yeah, 100%, Louisa. So again, another community, sort of target community we look at is people who are in rural areas. Something, I mean, I live in Birmingham. I don't know about everybody else. You're kind of city or a bit more rural, sort of having a look for nods and shakes. Yeah, so certainly living in a city, it's something I take for granted that I can just get a train to go and see something and get a train home, like that's a given. But it's a real huge barrier for somebody, especially if that's compounded by financial, you know, paying for a ticket to go to the theatre, for example, and then paying for a taxi to get home on top. It suddenly really like hikes the prices up, doesn't it? And it starts to become quite inaccessible. Yeah, lovely. Right, I think that's sort of, anybody got any other questions or anything about engagement? Yeah, sorry, I sort of said I'm going to describe what it looks like. So a lot of my life then is kind of making up events, and that can be online, that can be in real life, and it's about trying to unpack these keys for certain audiences. So just thinking of one, we did this outreach in libraries and it was about the costume workshop. That's what I predominantly work on. And we had these sensory boxes and they had little holes, and so this was for children, and they put their hands inside and they had to like either feel, so we had like a wig that was made out of feathers, and we tried to pick up on each taste, each sense. So we had taste for one as well, and that was about the fake blood that we use, and that's made with glucose, so we had these glucose sweets to give to the children. And it's this way of like thinking creatively about how do I interpret that into different steps to make somebody understand and engage with this in a more fun, more generally more sensory way. So that's just one example, but there's lots of different things in that as well. Lovely. Okay. Any more questions on engagement? No. Fab. All right. So next we've got producer. Now, I think producer is by and large the thing that seems to vary the most, depending on who is employing you and in what capacity. But what do you guys already know about producing?
I think producing's the producer's the person that pulls everything together. So they will source the funding, they will source the artists, like they're sort of the binding of everybody else. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, really lovely, Katie. Thank you. I think I love the binding. That's brilliant. Anybody else?
Yeah, just to add to that, I'd say they're kind of the person that does what the more creatives might think of as like the more boring, but like it is the essential stuff. It's like the spreadsheets and the money, like you said, and it's about bringing the vision into actuality for the creatives and like helping them actually make it happen, I guess.
Brilliant, lovely. Well done, Kate. Making it happen, that's, yeah, crucial, isn't it? Anybody else got anything to add to that? No, that's cool. That's great. So yeah, I think. Oh yeah, go on. Yeah.
Just a question, really. Would it link anything to how, like, a project manager would run a show? Is it that sort of role, or would it differ too much?
No, I don't think it, yeah, again, I think the boundaries are quite fluid with a producer. So it does originally come more from like the performing arts world, and this idea of like you produce a show, and that is more like the practicalities. And I always see it as a bit of like this bridge as well, because I think working artistically and creatively, that whole process in creating that space and that environment for generally like an actor or, you know, an artist or somebody like that, and the way that that work is produced is not always the same as like sort of like targets or knowing exactly what the outcome's going to look like until later down the line. So it's somebody who understands that process of a creative artistic process, who is able to create the space and think about the practicalities and be a translator to the kind of wider worlds as well, is kind of the simplest I can put it. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, for example, for our dissertation, we have to do a project plan. So we're working, one of our module leaders, I'm not sure if you know her, name's Judy Owen, and she like based in the West Midlands as well, and she's amazing. Like there was we had a meeting like a few weeks ago, and I've got this idea and it's all up in the air, and I went to her, like, you know, I hadn't really prepared too much, but she brought it back down to earth, and she asked me all the right questions, and she knew all the points that she had to hit to bring it, you know. She was very, very skilled in that, and I think that makes her a really good producer, you know.
Yeah.
To solidify ideas and put them into perspective and clear, you know, have clear points and everything like that.
Yeah, great, absolutely. I think it's so important. But it is, like, going back to that, it is a really flexible role as well. Well, I'd say you'll be a kind of producer if that's what your kind of thing is, but different producing roles within companies. So I've seen things like creative learning producer. So that would be somebody who probably, I mean, it sort of says what it is on the tin, doesn't it? Like you're looking at the creative learning program, for example, and you're producing that. So you're thinking about hiring the freelancers that will work on that program. You're thinking about like the content of that education and what that might look like. You're thinking about the schools, for example, or the colleges that you're going to connect with. So all of that kind of practical, getting it done, getting it produced. Yeah, fab. Any more comments, questions about producing? No? Lovely. Okay. Next one, got development. Who knows about development? This one always threw me. I didn't understand this until probably about 5 years ago. No? It's the money. Development generally means where the money. Okay, so within a really big organisation especially, it's about the people who are going to be applying for your funding, making those connections with funders. I've worked quite a bit with our development officer. We're reapplying for a heritage lottery fund because of everything's changing with COVID. So I've had to work with her because she can sort of translate. I'm trying to put these lovely creative programs together, but without her, I wouldn't be able to communicate that to our funder very well, if that makes sense. Yeah. So development in general means about the funding, about the money. Lastly, I've got programming. Does anybody know what programming is? Oh, okay, again, so this is a bit of a flexible one. I think it's got a lot of crossovers with producing as well. So it's somebody who generally puts on like the live events of a programme. So like, for example, if you're working in an art gallery, somebody who works on collections or curating, they're dealing more with like the stuff, right? The tangible actual stuff. Somebody who programs, they program events, right? So they're programming, they'll put a programme together of things. And now that can include parts of the exhibition and stuff, but they're generally thinking more about the people and the more kind of, event and not tangible stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah, fab. Okay. And then I'd like to open it up to you guys. Is there anything else, any other roles that you've heard of that you'd like a bit of clarity on? No. Fab. Okay, well that's that bit done. If you do have any that pop up, just type it in the chat and I'll have a look a little bit later. Right, so I'm going to stop sharing this for a second. And what I'm going to ask you to do now, so I'm just kind of going to ask you to do a little bit of a skills audit is what I call it, and have a little think about where your skills are already, where you might like your skills to be, and also what you definitely don't want to do as well. So like, I'm just going to give you an example. I definitely don't like working in development. It's not my strong suit, writing bid applications. I did have to do it myself in my own practice, but I find it really hard and I don't really like it, and I think there's lots of people who are better at it. So that's just one example, because I think as much as it's good to know what you want to do, it's really helpful to know what you don't want to do too. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of ask you to do, again, I'll call it a skills audit. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms of about 2 or 3, and I just want you to have a little discussion between yourselves. So think about that, like skills that you have now, skills that you'd like to develop, skills that you're not fussed about, okay? You can also think about like maybe organisations that you already know of that might fit into that as well. So organisations you do want to work with or you have worked with, and organisations or types of organisations or types of art that you're not so interested in. Is that all right? So I just want you to have like an informal chat. I'm going to drop in as well, just in your breakout rooms, and then we'll come together at the end and just have a little talk about what you've discussed. Okay, fab. Just bear with me while I pop you into breakout rooms. Great.
You okay?
Yeah, it's going well. It's going nice. I'm just reminding myself what's coming next, and then I'm going to drop in.
Just wanted to say I'm still here.
Oh, nice. Yeah, no, it's going really well. They seem like really interested, and
they're really nice. I think what's been interesting though, there are a lot of my graduates, which because I was wondering whether it'd end up being because it's free and it went out kind of social media, whether you'd end up with quite a number of people who were I suppose not expecting to go into that sector, but definitely a certain demographic still, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely needs to be some more work around that.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? And it's tricky when it's all online, because you do rely on like the same networks, and it's hard to think like outside that. I mean, I find that hard anyway, thinking online how to do more like engagement and outreach, you know.
Yeah, and I think because like, you know, Paige, you curated it, obviously she kind of language and stuff like that as a young producer herself, and you know, from a very different background, hope that the kind of some of those networks would pick up. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you carry on figuring out what you're doing. I know what it's like.
Cheers. Thank you. everyone back? Yeah, lovely. Okay, brilliant. So I hope that was useful for people. I think it's nicer to kind of do that in smaller groups, so you can obviously get to speak a little bit more, and I think you can support the other person a little bit more as well when it's a bit more intimate. So I'm just going to ask a couple of people if they wouldn't mind feeding back about stuff that they spoke about. It was lovely to drop in as well. I hope that was okay with you. And it was just really nice to catch those little glimpses of what people were talking about. So, Hattie, do you mind just sharing one or two things that you gleaned from that little breakout there?
I kind of enjoyed our little chat about sort of what skills do we now need to get in this new sort of environment that we're in. We're saying, like, do we adapt to this whole sort of electric online sort of world for theatre, or do we sort of push back and try and sort of adapt into the, you know, to get live audiences back there, because theatre and live performance is so much about having that actor audience sort of connection. Yeah, because I made a point how, like, I feel like a lot of my skills is more like crafty and like making, so like making like model boxes for theatre shows and stuff, whereas now I'd have to learn more on like cinema 4D, and like it's just changing small aspects of what you already have. So.
Thank you for sharing, Hattie. That's really good, and I just think so relevant about, I mean, we're all having to think about our skill set, aren't we, and how adaptable we can be, how things can run online, if they can run online, you know. I think they're big questions and not totally resolved, and I'm sorry I don't have any easy answers to that either. Right, thank you. I'm going to ask somebody now about maybe things that either they struggled with or that they don't want to kind of go into. You know, there was something that kept coming up for me that I heard. I wonder whether you all think the same. But Kate, I'm going to ask you about that. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because me and Louisa come from very different aspects. You know, Louisa's like an illustrator, practicing artist. I'm more interested in producing, but we both said we need to learn more about funding and like applying for bids and money and just that whole side of it. Yeah, it's just scary.
I love that noise though, Kate. I think that was a great noise.
I feel like everyone's feeling that as well, especially when you get to that stage where you're like, I just want to make my own projects happen, and then you're like, but now I need money. So yeah, we're both feeling that and want to improve as much as we can with that.
Brilliant, thank you for sharing. That's great. I'm going to do so another 2 quick rounds of that. So again, I'm going to ask somebody to say some like skills or something, you know, that they're interested in or, you know, developing, and then maybe something a bit scary after that. So Ruth, can I ask you what maybe you're interested in developing, or what your skills are at the moment? Something maybe a bit more positive. What do you think?
I guess we were touching upon, because I want to like to be a director and Joe wants to be a writer, so we were both talking about like people skills and just doing it. And Tia mentioned that as well. That's a big thing for us. Like, I guess even just being here, I guess we're showing a bit of motivation if you want some positive things. And yeah, so I guess it's making connections with people is another thing that popped up, and like having confidence to put yourself out there in quite a competitive industry. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you don't have to put positive things on things, by the way, if they don't feel positive, but thank you. That was really nice. Just give me 1 sec. I'm going to try and put this light on next to me because I'm looking at a little bit half in the dark, so just 1 sec. There we go. I think that's a tiny bit better. Lovely, thank you very much for sharing. And then we'll come last to Kathleen. Can I ask you about something as well, either scary or not scary? You go, whatever you fancy.
Yeah, I would like to apologize if you can hear any noise, by the way. I've got a very noisy family, and because of COVID, I had to come back home. Yeah, so basically, Karis and I were talking about skills we wanted to develop, and both of us said networking and trying to put yourself out there, because we're both in our final years of university. And it was kind of it's kind of this scary thing of I mean, you feel like you've done I mean, for me at least, I feel like I've done quite some things at university, but I don't feel like I've done enough, or that I've done enough to put myself out there. So it's kind of this tricky thing of not having the safety net of university anymore. So yeah.
Right, yeah, thanks for sharing. I think that came up a lot from the bits that are dipped into conversations, is thoughts about networking, both, you know, positive and negative, and talking about people who maybe aren't naturally networky, or feel like it's networking can be a bit of a dirty word almost, like it just feels a bit like schmoozy, and that's all valid. I think my one thing was to say is work with people who you don't feel like you're schmoozing, and that will come quite naturally. Like you'll naturally see when you do just kind of click with somebody and you have the same interests and you develop the same approach to things. And then no, that's a lot easier said than done, and it is a process and it does take time, and there will be lots of people who make you not feel great along the way. And I don't mean that in terms of horrible, but you just don't necessarily click with everybody, and that's fine. And you don't work creatively with everybody, and that's fine, but you do find them eventually. Fab. Okay, thank you very much for doing that. So the next thing I wanted to speak about is opportunities and where to find them. So it's going to be a bit of a group mind map exercise. So I'm going to lead it on the whiteboard. Has anybody used the whiteboard on Zoom before? No. Okay, so it's really dead easy. I'll literally share a screen and it looks like a whiteboard and you can type on it and it's great. All right. But actually, maybe before I do that, let's think about the 3 strands of employment and getting money first. So then we can kind of branch out and then think afterwards for each of those opportunities, where do we find them? So if I briefly go back to my presentation. Fab. Okay. Can everyone see that? Just give me a nod. Great. Okay, so yeah, these are my 3 strands. These are where I get money from, simply. So I've got employment. Yeah, they're in this kind of like traffic light system. It's not like that's not purposeful. That's just different colours. So employment, and really obvious here, but we've got like some pros and cons. But I think it's worth talking through. Some of them are really self-explanatory, and then some of them I'd like to elaborate on a little bit and hopefully tell you how you can potentially avoid the cons or what you can do to offset them or balance them out. So we've got employment. Now, employment's great within the creative sector, but I think worth pointing out straight away is that for lots of people, there's just not a possibility to be employed, or it's very rare to be employed. So if you're an actor, for example, you're much likely to be self-employed or represented by an agent. You're not necessarily going to be employed, or you might be employed for like a block of work. So we have people in rep, for example, so you might have a block, but essentially you'll be self-employed. And again, like if you're an illustrator or a photographer, it's more likely that you will be somebody who is working off commissions and not entirely employed by somebody. So I understand if like you're an artist as well, I think that fits in that category. So if you're actually creating, producing or making the creative work, a lot of the time you won't be in the employment sector because it's just not open to you in the same way that it is, for example, in engagement or in development or programming or some of those things that we spoke about, which are more employment roles, and producing as well. But obviously with employment, you've got the pro of a constant wage. We spoke about networking as well. Now, I think it's through my engagement work and the sort of more producing work that's enabled me to find those contacts. And so I think it's a real beneficial to be employed in that respect, to build your contacts, to build your base, and to have a lovely team around you who can help share contacts too. You get specified hours as well with employment work. You might do a bit of overtime, and there might be a bit of flexibility in that, but generally you know how many hours you go into work a week, which is always nice. And it is important as well. It is like, I think this is a theme, something I'm going to come back to a lot throughout this. So it sounds quite like light, really. Oh yeah, I get to know what hours I work. But I think if you're in self-employment, it can really, really quickly get on top of you. And it's quite tricky to have those boundaries with clients and say, actually, you know, this is not achievable in the timeline that you want. I can't do this. And that's really hard to say sometimes. So I don't think it should be taken lightly how important that is to just know what you're up against and how long you're going to be working. As you know, I spoke about teamwork as well, but another pro is that you've got a team. And for example, I was saying about development, it's lovely to know that there's other people who are more specialised within that team who are going to make life easier, who love doing that part of the work that they do and doing it really well. So you get to get on with the part that you really like doing and doing that really well. Really important as well, last one on the pros, is that your tax and your NI are taken care for you, yeah. And coming to self-employment afterwards, I think for a lot of people that can be the scary thing about thinking about managing your own finances, and it is a bit scary, definitely, but it's not as scary as you think it would be. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in self-employment, but then I think just to be balanced, we've got some cons on employment as well. So it can be difficult to find suitable or interesting roles. I think you have to be more flexible. So I'm thinking about what I do. So for me, it would be like, I think a dream thing would be to do like photography, heritage, sociology somehow, mixed in with engagement. And now I love the job that I do with the RSC. It's flexible, like it's something I've come around to, but like the idea of working on heritage and integrating that, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't immediately line up with my skills. I absolutely love it, and being flexible is part of that. Now I've put it in the cons, but it's for me, it's a pro, but I've tried to think about more generally about what people like. So for a lot of people, not working exactly on what their key interests are might be difficult or challenging. I quite like the challenge, but everybody's different. There can be lots of competition for quite a few amount of roles as well, depending on the sector as well. Like for example, development, working in development and getting the funding, that's not huge. Like it's still competitive, but it's maybe not as competitive as the other roles, and especially within the West Midlands, especially recently, maybe not super recently, but there was a little bit of like a gap with the amount of development officers, and so they're crying out for people who wanted to work in development. It can be outcome focused as well, so you can have like certain people saying we want X amount of this, or we've got to produce sort of like this many things, we've got to have this many shows. Maybe not the chance to be as exploratory as you can with getting funded, for example. So there's a program called Developing Your Creative Practice, and there's a funding program called Developing Your Creative Practice, which Arts Council England do. And that fund is just open to you developing your creative practice, so you don't have to have specific outcomes, and you don't have to have like a commodity at the end. You're not trying to sell something to somebody, it's just an opportunity for you to practice and hone your artistic creative skills. Obviously that doesn't always come into employment. There's generally always, you've got to have a certain amount of visitors, or you've got to sell something, or you've got to engage a certain amount of people. Okay. And again, I've put that in the cons, but that can be a really big motivator for some people. So again, these are just a bit arbitrary, but I think they're just good points to think about when you're thinking about the different types of employment and what's expected in each. There's a lot of part-time roles as well, specifically in the kind of area of engagement. I know that holds true for other areas, but it's just something worth being aware of, I think. And also you're going to have to kind of stick to sort of house rules as well. So if you're in self-employment, you do your own work, obviously it's your own voice, whereas in employment it's a house rules. And you know, there's lots of variation within that, obviously, but it's just worth noting. All right. So any questions on employment or anything like that? Or maybe I should do that at the end as a whole over these 3 different types of funding and employment. Okay, great. All right, so then we've got self-employment. So yeah, a work pattern that can be flexible and suits you. Yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, and people work differently. And I mean, but it's interesting that people brought this up earlier, but about COVID and thinking about that. I found this has changed slightly in employment. So it does seem that that's becoming more flexible in employment as well. But I guess the thing is that you can take on the projects that you want to, if you're not desperate for money, and you can be a bit more selective about who you work with and when you work in and how long you work, obviously. You've got full creative control within reason. Obviously, you've got to speak to the client, but generally, for example, if you're an illustrator, the person that is acquiring your services, they've seen your work, they like it, they want you to be you, they're pushing you to be you. And I've framed this as a pro, that there's an opportunity to learn lots of new skills. So, you know, we spoke about that fact in employment, that it's very divergent and people work on their own specific skills. But if you're working for yourself, you're your own social media manager, you're your own accountant to a degree, you know, so it's lots and lots of different skills. And so I think there's something really nice about that. So there's a bit of you all over kind of all of your output. So I've also got on that, the cons though, I've decided to do both here. So, but it's, you have to do everything, even the bits you're not good at or find difficult. And that is, you know, that can be challenging, definitely. So this was one I thought was really important to mention as well. So in self-employment, which you don't really get in employment or funding to a degree, but is being asked to work for free or not being valued for your time appropriately. A real big one, I think, to get around that, to make sure that you are being valued appropriately, is to know your worth. And so in the slide after this, I'll show you the kind of base rates, and I've got them for graduates and up to about 5+ years afterwards as well. But it shows you what your kind of hourly rate and your day rate should be, okay? And what you've got to factor in as well when you're self-employed is that because you're not getting your holiday pay, which I say here, you're not getting sick pay, and you have to pay your own tax and national insurance, sometimes it can sound like a lot of money when you first start charging somebody. So like saying £250 for a day rate could be like, whoa, that sounds way too much. But actually when you break it down and you look at it, you have to cover a lot more as a self-employed person. So my key to say to offset that, so if we go for the time undervalued first, is think about maybe the services that you're offering if you are self-employed. So for example, if I say with me, it's an hour of photography. So I would do an absolute minimum of £100 call out, and then I'd charge £50 every half an hour on top of that, for example. Okay. And then when you give people like a menu, it's almost like a menu, they can see where it is and how it's charged, and then you don't have to compromise as much then. So I think it's just really clear to break down and think about how much it costs you, and you can do that in terms of hours or half a day or a day rate. But thinking about what people might most commonly ask you for, and then doing like a bill of services on that would be a really good starting point, I would recommend. The other thing is about being asked to do free work. Now, obviously this is a personal choice. My thing about free work is I definitely won't work for free unless the person who is asking me to work for free is also working for free. So if they're doing it charitably, or it's for a voluntary organisation, or it's kind of like a mentoring thing, then I would do it, right, because that person's not getting a financial gain from it. If somebody's financially gaining from the stuff that I'm working on, I don't, for me, that's where I think, no, that's not really fair, is it? If you're benefiting because I'm doing work, and then that doesn't really add up. So yeah, that would just be my lines about sort of undervaluing or doing free work. Another difficult thing, so this kind of ties into the sort of fees as well, but managing expectations and having difficult conversations with clients. So I think it's really useful anytime you have a conversation with a client or you know, somebody who's asking you to do project work, to just write it down after you have a conversation, so you've got like a paper trail. That sounds like I'm expecting them to hold them to account, but I think it's useful for you as well in terms of an audit. It's really helpful for me to look over and think like it, because it's horrible if you get to a point with somebody, for example. So I'm just trying to think of an example outside of mine. So I'm thinking of like an illustration commission. Somebody asked me to do an illustration commission. I say, can you send me over some images, for example? And then 3 weeks later they message and they say, where's the illustration? I wanted it for somebody's birthday. But you know, and you say, but you had to send me the images, and they said, no, I didn't. So it's just like those difficult things, whereas if that was written down, you'd have that proof and you'd know that thing, and then you'd be able to chase it up a little bit more quickly as well. Right. And then the last thing I put about self-employment, and the reason why I've put this last as well is because the next thing works in contrast well. So for self-employment, generally, selling is important if you're delivering a service and somebody's buying it. So that can be quite a pressured environment. Now, I touched on it briefly, but I spoke about that developing your creative practice fund. So funding, for example, can work differently in that respect. And that it's important to note, not always. So you can get funded for specific projects where they want specific outcomes. That happens quite a lot. But I believe, in my experience, funding can allow you to be a little bit more exploratory. So it's not always, like, it's not a commodity so much necessarily. So for example, you might put on a series of plays. They might want you to sell tickets if you get funded. I'm thinking of Arts Council, for example. So they want you generally to have about 20% funding on Arts Council lottery grants. So you might charge for tickets, but a lot of the creative capability that you're developing, you don't have to charge as much as you would, for example, if you were self-employed. So it gives you that little bit of breather room, I think, to be more creative, while still, but you still do have to think about that commodity just a little bit and what you're selling. So I've kind of covered that as well. So I've done the pros while trying to introduce funding. Another real big thing as well, so you know, we spoke about writing funding bids, and they're quite chunky documents as well. The Arts Council ones definitely are, and there are other funders out there. I'm just speaking briefly on Arts Council just because we've got a specific amount of time. But I think what it does do, and what some of those forms really do help you do, is think about really in depth and really get your head around what your project will look like, and all the kind of aspects about what you're charging, who's involved, how involved they're going to be, and they will ask you all these questions in the document as well. All right. So the cons to funding are just pitfalls and things to be aware of, because I think that, as I just said, they are really chunky documents, a lot of them. Not, again, there are different funders out there, but if I'm referring to the Arts Council one, I'm going to stick to that. There can be a lot of work before there's any payoff. Okay, so it does take a lot of time to pour into it. And I've put this a little bit underneath that one, but I think it's really worth bearing in mind that you will have at least one refusal. So your first Arts Council bid will almost definitely be refused. If you're not refused, please come and tell me, because that will be like the honest a shooting star. Okay, and that's all the way up as well. And the reason why I'm saying that to you is so that you don't get disheartened if that does happen. What it means is that you've got to try a bit more and kind of flesh that out and get it to reality. The really annoying thing as well is when you do get a refusal, when you're not being you've not been successful, they say that they'll give you feedback. But sometimes the feedback is just there were other more successful applicants, which can be really disheartening. So it's just a case of, when that happens, if that happens, you don't take it personally. It just means that they don't necessarily have the resources to give you full feedback, okay? And it's a hard process, but part of your job in that is then reading through and trying to be a mind reader and thinking, okay, so what is it that they need from me? They do have like lots and lots of documentation that comes along with them, so you know that there is the information out there, and there's also a lot of support groups and a lot of mentors, and there are even people who you can pay, and this is up to you. I do find this useful, so I write my own documents and then I pay somebody about 150 pounds depending on who they are, to just look over it, read it, and sort of give it that kind of extra eye, and they've got that more development eye to think about, like, how do I word this appropriately, and how do I make sure I get it successful the next time round. But I just think that's worth knowing as well, just to be prepared to, like, you know, don't worry if it's not successful straight away. And for all of those reasons, that's why, and again, it's really good to plan well in advance. So I think give yourself a year, especially if it's your first one as well. Don't think about starting that project till a year later, I would say, from when you kick off writing your funding bid, roughly, you know, within reason. And again, it's worth noting that they are super, super competitive. But that doesn't mean don't apply. That just means just be prepared to work on it and get help, and try and get as many eyes on it as possible. But then you pay it back as well, and you do it for somebody else when you can. Yeah? Great. All right, so was that all right? I didn't get to see everybody's faces while I was presenting that. Did that make all sense and hopefully not too doom and gloom? Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Robbie. Any questions or anything on that, guys? No? Great. Okay. Fab. Oh, yeah, Robbie, yeah.
Oh, a question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can you, I don't know if you mentioned this, but is it possible to be employed, self-employed and funded at the same time, or like kind of like, so yeah, and is it easy as well, or is it like kind of chaos?
Yeah. It's a bit of both. Yeah, it's I like it, and they all give me different things. I guess that's the best thing to say. So I love that I love working for the artist. I've got a team with me. I've got like people there. They give me that support. I know I'm going to the same people. I love that they've got all those professional services. It's amazing. And then through my funded work, I get able to like explore stuff. But it is that case of balancing. And I think it's, to be frank with you, I've made the mistake of overbooking myself and then underbooking at times, and that's part of the process. And I'm still working it out as well. Like, I've not got it all perfectly wrapped up. Sometimes I do overbook myself, but it's part of it. And I think a really good thing to think about working with people who respect that as well, and who actually think it's a bit of an asset that you're this kind of, this is what you're into, that you are this flexible person, that you do have lots of like different bows to your arrow, as you, whatever that phrase is. Yeah, hope that answered it. Any other questions? Fab. All right then. Oh, this time's gone really quickly. So, okay, I have, right, what I'm going to do, just because I've kind of gone a little bit over time, so I hope I'm not talking at you too much, but I'm going to just very briefly talk about opportunities and where to find them. So I'm just going to share a document with you in the chat. So I've kind of done these 6 headings. Sorry, let me just share this. Apologies. It's not letting me share, annoyingly. What I'll do, I'll send that document over to you individually, so I'll make sure that I'll get you details off Erica. I hope, Erica, I can do that and I can send you some details. But kind of just to break it down, the key things, there's like 6 areas I sort of try and break it down into. So I've got like social media, which is really helpful if you're following the right people. I repost a lot of opportunities as well and call outs. So if you want to follow me, won't be offended if you don't though, that's fine. I also think like looking at like the organisations that you want to work for, following them is really important. There's a great account called No Jobs in the Arts as well, bit of a sarcastic name, but they post loads of lovely opportunities too. Then you've got your employers as well, and thinking about, I know I just picked a few that I know are kind of either actively employing or they present like really good like paid internships or initial kind of job like entry level opportunities. So there's the Jerwood and the Jerwood Western programme, which is open to people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. That's a great one, and they've got loads of opportunities up and down the country, like from producing to collections, loads of really good stuff. So they're open to people who have recently or just graduated and are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. The Barber Institute, as part of the Uni of Birmingham, they have a great intern programme, and every year they do 6 internships which are paid, and they're like, there's one in collections, there's one in education, and there's one in marketing, I think, as well. Last one on that one is Coventry. Coventry Biennial, they do some really lovely paid internships, and it's also worth noting it because it's Coventry City of Culture 2021, and they have lots of opportunities as well. As I say, I'm going to share this with you, so don't worry if I'm going really fast, but I just think it's good to give you a bit of an overview. A lot of places do call outs and projects work as well, so you might not have like a big employment with them, but they might just post out a little opportunity and you get a little payment. Creative Black Country are really good with that. Multi-story and Beat Freaks, especially if you're a younger person. It's good to look at mailing lists as well. There's 2 that I think I would recommend and have little jobs on them from time to time, but there's Birmingham City Council Cultural Development one, and there's the Cultural Recovery Unit, which is run by Culture Central as well. Jobs websites, there's Leicester Uni Jobs Desk. That is like one of the best ones for arts jobs, really oddly, and Arts Council England, obviously, and The Guardian. Last sort of one, so there's like 6 sort of breakdowns overall, is like associations and networks, and now that's just going to depend on what you're interested in. In the Midlands, if you're into photography, Grain is a really good professional network. Okay, so they're about photography. There's also Artworks Alliance if you're interested in engagement, and there's Museums Detox as well, and they're about decolonisation of heritage and museums. They're amazing. But your organisations and networks, that's going to depend on what you're interested in personally. Okay. As I say, I'll send that list over to you as well, guys, but I'll try and break it down into those 6 kind of areas and think about where I'm looking. Fab. Right. I struggled to share the last file, but I'm going to quickly show you. Now, this is just an overview, and forgive me because this is a text edit document, but hopefully you can see it. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see that, guys? Yeah, lovely. Okay. So these are the questions they will ask you on the project lottery fund, the Arts Council England National Lottery Projects boards. Okay, so as you can see, when I just scroll down, it actually doesn't look like that much, but all of these populate and they grow really quickly. What I'll do, I'll send you the link in this chat to where I got these documents from, because it's worth knowing that when you do apply on Arts Council England, it takes you to this portal called Grantium, and you can only look at one question at a time. So this really helps me. So I type my application into here, and then I can just copy and paste it across. Okay, and what that I think this really helps to do is like it's just a great project planning document, and it's really useful to kind of work out. All right, and they're the exact same questions that they will ask you at Arts Council England. So I'll pop that in the Just give me 1 second and I'll do that now, so you've got that. Right, yeah. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Right, so I'm going to right. So if you follow that link there under cheat sheets, that will take you through to all the questions, and they're all there for you. So you can populate that document and have a think about whether you want to do that kind of, big chunk of work, or how that looks. Okay. I'm sorry that was really brief. I think I've gone on, I went on too long at the start, and now we're kind of running out of time and I want to fit everything in, but hopefully that's useful. Does anybody have any questions about Arts Council England funding? I know that's huge, but yeah, I'm open to any questions. Yeah, Kathleen?
Yeah, sorry. Did you have any successful proposal? So to get funding, or yeah, I was wondering if you were part of any successful project in terms of receiving the funding.
Yeah. I've a couple. So a few heritage ones and a few Arts Council ones. This time is my first one, my full own one now. So I've already submitted it, and now I'm resubmitting it again really soon. So yeah, I have. At the moment, I haven't got anything to share with you, but what I would recommend, if you do want to have a look at successful ones, does anybody follow the white cube? No, so yeah, the white cube, it is actually what it sounds like. I'll type it in. They're starting off a library of successful applications, so you can go and look through and you can see in full detail people's applications that have already been successful, and I think that's really useful as well, because again, we're all different platforms here, so you should be able to find something that is along the lines of your platform. See somebody who's done something similar and you'll know the pitfalls and what's worked and what's not.
Amazing, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Yep, okay. Very quickly then, I've got two last things to show you, and I think I'll just make the time limit. So, what did I want to show you? I wanted to show you about valuing your worth and how much your time is worth. So, let me just share that slide, which tells you about the day rates. And again, I can send this over to you. So this is on the Arts Union England website. So it's about the artists who are in a union together. And these are the given hourly and sessional or / daily rates that you should be charging as an artist. And that will vary. It's very dependent. But like, as you can see, as a new graduate artist, you should be charging about £22 per hour. Did you think it would be that much? No. Yeah. But remember what I said, you've got to factor in a lot. Okay, so you're going to factor in your materials, you're going to be paying for all your own sick pay, holiday pay, tax, national insurance, and it soon adds up. So even though I would say some of these numbers sound a bit scary when you're first asking somebody to pay you for that, do remember and stand your ground and know what you're worth. Okay. Fab. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is just some tools that I use online to make my life a bit easier. So there's 4 programs I tend to use which make my life easier as a self-employed and funded person, and even an employed person as well. So this will be the very last thing I share with you. Then you can ask me any questions if you have any. And then we can have a nice evening. Right. Okay, so Canva's the first one. This is Canva here. You can see I've got all my designs, and the reason, so what I use Canva for is for presentations. I use it for CVs and applications, so they're all letterheaded. I use it for proposals. I use it to make publications, as you can see here. But I would really recommend it if you are employed. If you're expecting to be self-employed. I've just got a sample invoice for you here. It's just really useful. You've got everything saved in one space, then you can make folders, you can number your invoices, and then you can just use the same format then and just populate it with what you do, and make your life a lot easier here. All right. Have people used Canva much before? Yeah, it's pretty popular now, but I definitely say in terms of just invoicing, it makes my life really easy. Fab. Okay, next thing I will show you is Trello. Has anybody used Trello much before? Okay, so Trello is a really good online program if you work with multiple people. So if you're a producer, I think it's a really good program for that line of work. Okay, so if you're managing lots of different people on one project, or you don't have to be managing, it can be that it's more equitable like that, and you're a group of artists working together or something like that. So it allows you, let me show you. So it allows you to put, for example, like this is a family's first project, and you can click onto it and you can put attachments on there. So this is something that we use in workshops. So we say, okay, an artist is coming and they're doing workshops. Can you upload what you need in advance, and we'll print them out? Can you upload a plan? And we make sure that we've got what we need there for you. All right, but you can use it really flexibly. It doesn't have to just be used for like workshops. It could be used for events, and then other people can comment. So you've got like a comment feed at the bottom, which allows people to put in their own comments about what they can or can't do, or what else needs to be worked on. You can do lovely checklists as well. You can do due dates. So it's really good for working collaboratively. Okay. Can you guys see that now? So I've got a new one, which is Airtable. It's got orange at the top. Can you guys see that? Yeah, fab. Okay, so this is the third one that I use as well, and it's very similar, but this is more like of a calendar in a way, or it's kind of based, you can change it about how it kind of puts things together, but it's called Airtable, and I find it really useful, that more like project work. Okay, so it can help you really keep on task you know, we spoke earlier about, is it chaos about working on lots of different things? It can be, but this really helps me not to be chaos. So it can enable you to tag lots of people in and work together on the same things. You can put things with lovely labels on to just make your life a lot easier. It's just great. It's really intuitive. So it's like an Excel spreadsheet, but that's more pretty, reactive, and can be displayed in lots of different ways very quickly. Last thing I would recommend, I'm not going to show you my own account on this because it's about accounting, but it's just what I would recommend. So it's a free online platform called Quickfile. Why I recommend it, and like again, these are all my recommendations of what works well for me, but you can shop around and see what works for you. One, that it's free for kind of extra small to medium businesses, and that it's UK based as well, so it does a lot of the work for you in terms of our like VAT rates if you're up there, or kind of like tax rates and things like that. So it's just, again, it's just something that makes my life a little bit easier. It keeps it all in one place. You can update it as you need, and then when you do come to do your tax return, it's all kind of there for you, and it will take you through it, not completely step by step, but it does a lot of that hard work for you. All right, so those are just my 4 online kind of admin tools that I use to make my life easier. Right, we've come to the end of the session. It was lovely to meet you all. I hope you found that useful. I'm here for Q&As as well, so you don't have to leave immediately. But yeah, do let me know if you've got any questions at all. Yeah, Kate?
You said sorry, really quickly, that you repost lots of opportunities, but what is your social media? So
yeah, it's at, so I only have Instagram because I try and limit myself. It's at Johnston-Comerford. And pop that in for everyone.
Tara, I'm gonna say thank you to everyone who's here. We've dropped off a few bit, people have left a bit, but the recordings we'll send round some feedback forms to everybody, and also Tara, if you want to pop the documents through to me or to Gurpreet, then we can add those to the kind of session stuff. So thank you again. It's been brilliant. I'm looking at the comments, it's been absolutely fabulous. I'm going to let you carry on. I'll stop recording now, but if